Hello, welcome to the show. My name is Noel DeBona. Today we're going to talk about 50% of the vote. Do you need 50% of the vote to win your election? Today we're going to climb into the 2016 U.S. presidential race. We're already a year and a half away from time and people have kind of moved past it, but someone's in the seat right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what he is doing while he's a politician, while he's in the seat. But let's go back in time a little bit and talk a little bit about this race and what this resonates to a local election, a statewide election, a county election. 50% is usually the marker of what you need to win your election. Some will say +1, some will say +2, but I'm going to tell you here today you can probably win without 50%, a little bit lower than that, based on another factor in there called other, blanks and write-ins. And if you look a little bit on the screen right up here, you'll see that 5.7% was in the other category. And that will happen in almost every election that you're involved in as being a candidate. You'll see that those numbers are not, and today we'll talk a little bit more in depth about what happened a year and a half ago in November of 2016. As you know, the two candidates that ran against each other went through a tough field to get there, especially on the Republican side. So, let's talk a little bit about Hillary Clinton. And obviously she had the popular vote throughout the United States of America. 48.2%, 65.84 million people voted for her in this last election, which was almost 3 million more than Donald Trump did with 46.1%. At just under 63 million, it's 62.92 million people voted for Donald Trump. But the difference was, and we can go into this and really in depth about this, is 7.8 million people didn't vote for neither of them. They voted for somebody else, or they didn't vote for anybody really. You obviously had a libertarian in Johnson, you had the Green Party in Stein. They ran in the presidential election. You also had other people called write-ins. You go in to vote and you say, well, I don't want to vote for this person. I don't want to vote for this person. And I don't like the two other candidates. I might as well write in Mickey Mouse. And some people can do that. You can go in and write in somebody else. You think you can do a better job, you write your own name in there as a presidential candidate. But 5.7% was the other, whether it be Libertarian, Green Party, and write-in. That other could change a whole race. You look into this electoral, and obviously we have an Electoral College here in the United States. You look into that and you will see that some really swing states were so close in margin of victory. We're talking 1,000 to 10,000 votes with 500,000 votes involved. That is such a small margin of victory. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe some of the states, some of those swing states in there that really were so close. I mean, obviously, Trump took some of those swing states in there, the Iowas and the Ohios and the Pennsylvanias. Then he went up a little north and got Wisconsin and Michigan. But those swing states, some of those were actually more in reality in the past have been blue states, have been Democratic states that have won. And where is the factor in all this? And obviously for a year and a half you've been talking about all these different things. Where's the factor in this? What happened? How did this happen? Well, there's a lot of different factors, and this can happen in a local election. This could happen in a state election. They call it the perfect storm sometimes. Sometimes that perfect storm is there. Kind of thinking of George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg in The Perfect Storm up here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Sometimes there just is a perfect storm to get to where you want. Trump is not a politician. He came out, he says, I'm going to run against Ted Cruz, Rubio, and Kasich, and Jeb Bush, and all these other people that are original politicians. And he got through that whole entire field. And then on the other side of Clinton, you had Bernie Sanders, somebody that ideas-wise is that ultra-liberal left progressive movement, socialism, free everything, to be honest with you, free college tuition, and he resonated some of those people. And I think that tore into and took a little bit, actually I know for a fact, it took a lot from Hillary Clinton. Because what happened is at the end, after the primary was over, a lot of the Bernie Sanders group, a lot of the, this is happening all throughout the US, by the way, and that's why we're talking about this today, a year and a half later. There is a progressive movement of ultra-liberal left, progressive movement, Bernie Sanders people, we call them, that are actually infiltrating into the Democratic Party and saying, listen, we need you to be more left. We need you to have these ideas. And a lot of those people that were Bernie Sanders primary people that voted for him, at the end of the day in the final election, didn't vote for Hillary Clinton or voted for Donald Trump or didn't vote or wrote in somebody else to be the president. There's a factor in there in those swing states in an electoral college. Now, in a regular election, you could see this happen too. But that difference of 3 million votes that Hillary Clinton had over Donald Trump makes me think, no electoral college, and Hillary Clinton's the winner. She won by 3 million votes. It's a huge margin. Almost a little over 2% of the vote, 48.2 to 46.1%. In the electoral college, though, you had Trump at 306 and you had Clinton at 232, a difference of 74 points in the Electoral College. All those swing states, states that are originally a blue state or a Democratic state, there were certain counties in there that was a huge swing, and they looked a lot, and they went back in time and they said, Obama won by this much, but Clinton couldn't salvage that. And how did Donald Trump pick up the pace and win some of these counties? I'd say in Ohio. How did he make up the ground? Well, he talked about a little bit of the issues. What were the big issues? He talked about jobs, creating jobs. Most of the time, Democrats are talking about creating jobs. Here is a Republican, or is he a Republican? He might be in the middle somewhere, a moderate or whatever, or maybe he's just a celebrity. But he resonated, we're going to create jobs. We're going to bring jobs back. That kind of set well with some of the voters, and they said, you know what? I got nothing to lose, but give this guy a shot. He's a celebrity. He's on a Celebrity Apprentice, and his big slogan that I also think is part of the equation of how he was able to salvage this is he got to some of the younger voters, some of the people that don't follow politics. And in these presidential elections, I think we had right around 56% of the vote, of the registered voters out there went out and voted. Usually in some big elections, some presidential elections, you can get up to like 70%. So between that, you had about 15% difference of they didn't come out and vote in this last election. That hurt Hillary Clinton. When people didn't go out and vote. The Bernie Sanders people, some of them stayed home, said, nope, I'm not voting. Or if I go into that voting booth, I go in and do the ballot, whatever way I do it, I may be going to vote for other elections going on, or I'm gonna blanket. And that's what happened in this last election. If you could look at some of those swing states and you start to see the trend of how can somebody win by 10,000, one of the states was 1,000 votes. Donald Trump won by 1,000 votes out of 500,000 votes. It's such a small, minute margin of victory that it kind of amazes me looking back at it. There was, obviously 13 swing states that were out there. But big issues. What were the big issues out there? Obviously, Hillary Clinton came after Trump and said, I want to see your tax returns. I want to know how much you're really making. And he fired back with, what about your personal emails? And that was the big story. Those are kind of the two big topics, the personal emails and the Benghazi situation, your tax returns, his personal life. Remember, at the end of the day, he's not a politician. All these things that happened, he was never really the politician. I mean, he was never a politician then. He was a celebrity. He was, a businessman. So he wasn't an elected official at that point. So in his lifetime, he might have thought he was going to do it, but it's funny how you can think about this. People have such a short memory span. Such a short memory span. Let me repeat that again. They only kind of remember what's going on today, what's going on this week, what's going on this month. Something that happened a year ago, People aren't going to always remember. You're going to have some people out there going to remember every pinpoint thing. But in reality, in the presidential election, people don't have all this time to sit in front of Fox News and CNN and watch all this all the time, unless you're a political guru. But people got sick of it. People have everyday lives. They're doing other things with their lives. They're trying to, raise their children and go to college and do these other things. They don't have all the time in the world to be sitting in front of the TV set for 8 to 10 hours watching all this stuff going back and forth and back and forth. And each one of them putting their foots in their mouths on each side. Whether you are Clinton or Trump or neither or either, it doesn't make a difference. They both did things on each side that criticized themselves. And that's what happens. Somebody comes after you, you come after them. And this happens in a lot of local elections as well. This will happen in a lot of statewide elections. If you're running against an incumbent, you're going to have to figure out why you are better than that other person in the seat, and what you're going to do better. And you have to resonate that to the person, to the people, to the voter. At the end of the day, it's about the voter. It doesn't matter if you do all this extra stuff, but if you're not getting to that person that's going to go into the polling station and vote or do an absentee ballot or early voting, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't resonate. And at the end of the day, you could see, and we're going to talk about polling. Huge thing about polling. It's changed everything. Polling, local elections. How many people really today have a landline? How many people have a landline anymore? Most of those phone calls are going through to that landline. Some of them go to obviously cell phones. Some of them go through the internet with polling. Some of them can, different avenues of doing it. But most people, even at the having a landline, is for emergency purposes. They don't pick up that phone anymore. So a lot of the data that you're getting today is almost going to be outsourced. I mean, how many people do have a landline? And I haven't had one in many, many of years, just because of the fact that it's an extra bill on the table. It's an extra, you have to fork out an extra $20 to $50 a month just on a landline. Most people have a cell phone, have a mobile phone. They can do everything through that cell phone today. They can check their emails. They can check their Facebook. They can check Donald Trump's Twitter account. And that brings me to where the marketing side of Donald Trump. We talked a little bit about Celebrity Apprentice, and we talked about "You're fired." That slogan, that "You're fired," resonated to a lot of younger voters and people that aren't really involved in the political process. You'd be surprised how many people aren't involved in the political process. They keep kind of tabs down the middle, down the stretch. But there was a huge percentage of people going into the election that day, the next day they were going into the polling station, undecided. They were undecided the night before the election. Can you believe that? In this day and age, in U.S. presidential election, they were undecided. Good 10% was undecided on who they were going to pick to be the next president of the United States. And that is not good for obviously Hillary Clinton, that people were undecided. They weren't sold on her. All these different factors came into play in this presidential election. And I go back in time to talk about Bill Clinton. What did Bill Clinton do? I mean, Monica Lewinsky. Let's be realistic. It was a scandal. But a lot of people just said, that's what they do up there. And he's the one who got caught and da-da-da-da-da, and it's no big deal. And people moved on from it. To be honest with you, they moved on to it. He came in front of them and said, I never had relations with X, Y, with that person. And then he came back and he apologized. So he lied right there, and then he came back and he apologized for it. And the apologizing goes a long way in politics. Once you get into that ring and start throwing blows, you can be ready for all this. It's going to come at you. They're looking at you through a microscope today with all the different censorships, the YouTubes, the videos, the podcasts. I mean, there's so many people watching you. This isn't just in politics. This is in celebrities. This is in athletes. You can go across the board. Everybody is looking at that person. Back in the day, someone get pulled over for drunk driving, they were a celebrity, you were getting them off. Today, huge liability. Municipalities are not doing that anymore. They're not taking on that liability to let that person go. But back in the day, it happened all the time. So today, it's evolved. Everybody's watching you. Big Brother's got their, everything's over your shoulder to see what you're doing. And we talk about Bill Clinton real quick. Bill Clinton was an innovator. He actually did something outside the box. Remember back in the day, he ran against George Bush Sr. He went on MTV. He went on the Arsenio Hall show with the saxophone. He did things outside the box to get to the younger voters. I remember back when I turned 18, my father said to me, listen, make sure you go vote. And I remember those presidential elections in my very first infancy stages of voting. I went out, definitely voted. He'd always say, make sure you vote today. Make sure you vote today. And even people that don't usually vote, it's that presidential election that's every 4 years they're going to go out and vote. In this past election, getting 55, 56% of the vote when it's usually 70% of the vote, people stayed home. Hillary Clinton might have not been able to get her vote out. Donald Trump, Make America Great Again slogan, as well as we're going to bring jobs. He also talked about building the wall. Well, here it is a year and a half later, and you'll be under a microscope on when you get elected, you also have to do the job. You also have to do what you said you were going to do. So now everybody's looking back on, okay, this is what he said he was going to do. Is he doing it? And we're a year and a half later now. Is he doing what he said he was going to do? That's for all politicians. You can come up, you can try to sell the story, you can try to sell what you're going to do. But if somebody says your next election for re-election comes in and they say, well, you know what? You said you were going to do X, Y, and Z, and you haven't delivered what you're going to do. That's the in. That's the in for people that are non-incumbents that want to run against incumbents. That's your in. That's your hook. You said you were going to do X, Y, and Z, and you didn't deliver the punch. You didn't deliver the package that you were going to talk about or you were going to do. You said this at this XYZ speech. You said this on TV over here. That's where you can compile that information to say, well, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do XYZ things. And that's where your platform comes in. Everything, you can learn a lot from this 2016 US presidential election. Do you need 50% of the vote? I'd be honest with you, with the write-ins and the blanks at any election, you could get in there at that 48, 49% of the vote. You could slide in there at that. And in this case, Donald Trump had 46.1% of the popular vote and ended up being the president of the United States by the Electoral College, which is something that's a little different on a US scale. Most of your elections on a statewide or a local election or a county election is not based off of that. But you also have to remember what party affiliation you're in. You have to get through the primary. Here in Massachusetts this year, the primary election is a day after Labor Day. It's September 4th, which is the day after Labor Day is the election. And it's because of the Jewish holiday. You either have to go on the front end of the Jewish holiday or you got to go on the back end of the Jewish holiday. And most of the time, it's on the back end. 2 years ago, it was September 24th in my municipality, which was on a Thursday because of the holiday. So, but what happened in this one is Bill Galvin, which is the Secretary of State of the Commonwealth, actually said, you know what, we're putting it on September 4th. And that's where it is. Are people going to be voting and thinking about the vote or going out to vote a day after Labor Day? People in transition, they're just getting over the summer break. Kids are going back to school. Are they going to be going out and voting? Are they going to do early voting? You're thinking about that in August? You're going to be fine-tuning it? Most people in the New England area and some of the northern states, they have a lot of different months of weather. They're not going to be thinking about these things. They're going to think it'll be their last weekend to spend time with their families or spend time with their significant others or whatever the case may be. Are they going to go in and vote? This is a good thing to be thinking about is how many people go out to vote on September 4th? How many people go out to vote the Tuesday after Labor Day? And where is that margin of difference and what does that make a difference? If you're in a party, you're in the Democratic Party, you're in the Republican Party, whichever state you're in, you got to figure out, okay, to get to the final election, I got to get through the primary. I got to get through my own. And that's what happened in the Clinton-Bernie Sanders situation. At the end of the day, some of them united. I admit, some of them united and said, you know what, I'm still with the party. I'm Bernie Sanders person. I'm going to go with Clinton. But some people said, nah, she's not left enough for me. I'm gonna give a vote to Trump. He's talking about jobs. I'm big Bernie Sanders person. But you know what? I like Trump. I'm gonna go with Trump on this side because he's gonna do something different. He's not a politician, and he's gonna come in and he's gonna go outside the box, and he's talking about these ideas. So today was built around 50% of the vote. And can you get in? Yes. The question is yes. A lot of insiders and a lot of people will say 50% of vote plus 1, 50% of vote plus 2. I'm telling you today, you could probably slide in at 48, 49%. That means you don't even have to get half of the people to vote for you in an election and get in. There's that margin. There's that margin of other write-ins and blanks. And you have to think about that will happen no matter what. No matter what election, you're going to get people that aren't going to vote for either of the two candidates, or there's going to be a third person that throws a wrench in it, that throws a wrench in the election. Just think about it this way. If the Libertarian Johnson and Stein from the Green Party weren't in the race, would that have made a difference? This goes back to the Ross Perot's days. Does it make a difference? It does. Because that margin, that 7.8 million people that didn't vote for either of the two, could have swung it the other way and Clinton could be the president today, almost like the Al Gore and George Bush Jr. Back in the day with the state of Florida. Today I had a lot of fun talking to you. I want you to fill in each week. We're going to be doing a show. Fill in on Win Today with Noel. Thank you so much. Have a great day.